Bloomberg News is reporting on one of the dumbest court decisions I've ever read in my life. They say, Iran was ordered by a U.S. judge to pay more than $10.5 billion in damages to families of people killed in the September 11th terrorist attacks and to a group of insurers. U.S. District Judge George Daniels in New York issued a default judgment Wednesday against Iran for $7.5 billion to the estates and families of people who died at the World Trade Center and Pentagon. It includes $2 million to each estate for the victims' pain and suffering, plus $6.88 million in punitive damages. Daniels found that Iran had failed to defend claims that it aided the September 11th hijackers and was therefore liable for damages tied to the attacks. Okay. For those of you who really aren't political junkies and you don't know all the ins and outs of this stuff, you have to understand this is utterly ridiculous because Iran had nothing to do with 9/11. Literally nothing. So we know that if anybody's more responsible for it, if you want to point to nations in the Middle East that are more responsible for it, it would be Saudi Arabia. What is it, like 16 or 15 of the 19 hijackers were Saudi. There's credible allegations of funding from top Saudi officials for what happened. We know that Saudi Arabia has funded Salafi jihadism the world over. That's the ideology of ISIS. That's the ideology of al-qaeda. That's also the government's ideology in Saudi Arabia. Now, they're our oil butt buddy, so we look away. Hey, business overrides anything, even if you massacre our civilians, so protect Saudi at all costs. Yeah. That's the way that we view it. Now, Iran, again, if you just have a basic understanding of the Middle East, you know that this is the dumbest court decision in human history. Iran, they have a Shia Islamist government. So it's still an Islamic nation, it's still a theocracy, it's still horrific in 1,000 ways, and we've covered endless stories of how horrible it is in many respects there. But they're Shia Islamist. Again, the people who did 9/11, they're Sunni extremists. So they're it's Wahhabi Islam, Salafi Islam. That's not Shia Islamism. In fact, Shia Islamists and Salafi jihadists hate each other. They despise each other. There's literally a proxy war, a Sunni-Shia proxy war going on in multiple places in the Middle East right now. They're like, no, I don't know, Muslim, so guilty enough. You have to pay. And look at the way they worded it. Daniels found that Iran had failed to defend claims that it aided the September 11th hijackers. That's not the way it works. They flipped the burden of proof. They're like, okay, people made allegations against you. They're true by default. Now defend yourself. That's not the way a court works. The way it works is innocent until proven guilty. Okay, we're going to assume that the person making the claim is wrong until they prove they're right. So somebody says Iran is responsible for 9/11. Okay, prove it. What evidence would they bring up? There is no evidence because they got nothing to fucking do with 9/11. Isn't this amazing? And then, by the way, so you might say, well, whatever, they're ordering another sovereign nation to pay. They're not going to pay, and there's no way to enforce this anyway. Remember, we have frozen assets of Iran that the U.S. froze as part of sanctions. Now, we released a lot of them and gave them over $100 billion of their own money back, and that's part of the Iran nuke deal where they're not going to build a nuke, and then we lift some of the sanctions, but we still have some of their accounts frozen. Apparently, there's a legal loophole that allows these guys to try to get that money through the accounts of theirs that we froze. So you accuse them of something they didn't do, and then you jack their money that you froze. Okay, if I was them, I'd be pretty fucking mad about that. They had nothing to do with 9/11. Unbelievable. Look, we gotta be smart about this stuff, man. Is it rational to be against the government of Iran? Of course! They're a horrible theocracy. Obviously, it makes sense to be against them. But because it makes sense to be against them, does not then mean that anything you accuse them of, they are by definition guilty of. They didn't do 9/11. So this is comically stupid, and I don't know the process by which to try to get a judge to not be a judge anymore, but this guy's an embarrassment. George Daniels, you don't know dick about the Middle East, and you should step the fuck down and apologize.